What's up, guys? Today I wanted to make a video about some phones that I don't talk about as much on the channel, but these are phones that I don't want you guys to forget about. These are still very good picks to consider. So I want to kick it off with the Asus Zenfone 9. Now I know this phone was a little bit expensive when it came out, a lot of you guys were saying, but the price has come down. It's come down to around $590. Remember, this is a flagship phone, guys, and it's a pretty decent deal. You can find them even a little bit cheaper on eBay. But this is an absolute beast of a phone, especially for anybody who wants a modern compact flagship. And I know it's not that compact, coming in at 5.9 inches, but again, most phones are like 6.5, 6.8 inches, so it is pretty compact for today's standards. The design on here is absolutely beautiful. I really like it, even though it's got a plastic back. Nothing about this phone feels cheap, and I really like the texture of the plastic back. It's got the aluminum frame, it's got IP68 dust and water resistant, and like I said, it just feels really comfortable in the hand. And like I said, much smaller than most phones these days. Now the screen on here is pretty good. It's a Super AMOLED display, 120 Hz HDR10 plus, 1100 nits peak brightness, so very good for outdoors. And it's 1080p 445 for the PPI. You got the punch hole. It's a very nice screen to look at for sure. You've also got the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 on here, and it's an excellent chip. This is the 8 Gen Plus chip as well too, so very fast phone regardless. It'll be able to play any game, and it's actually a relatively cool device. I've never had any type of heating problems with this phone, so just very fast. You can play games on here. You can pretty much do whatever you want, and it'll stay really fast. Also, this phone does have 128 gigs of internal storage and 6 gigs of RAM on the base model. And what's cool about this phone is that you actually have a headphone jack. So believe it or not, this phone does have a headphone jack, which is very rare for 2023 to have a flagship phone with a headphone jack. So that's really awesome. And then you also have on here some very good sounding stereo speakers, really good bass quality, very loud, especially for the size of this phone. So awesome speakers and a headphone jack is just an awesome combo. What's really cool about this phone is my favorite implementation of the fingerprint sensor, and that is on the side, guys. It just feels so much more natural, even than the in-display fingerprint sensor to me. So I absolutely love that about this phone. And then you also have on this phone very good cameras. It's got a 50 megapixel standard and a 12 megapixel ultra wide. I think this was really high on the list in MKBHD's blind smartphone test. I think this did a really good job, so I feel like that's a testament to how good the cameras are. It shoots in 8K24, 12 megapixel standard, not standard, but selfie cam, and then shoots in 4K30. Beautiful photos, guys. Like I said, very nice colors, good quality when it comes to detail and overall the image processing. The ultra wide is pretty good on here as well too. There's no dedicated telephoto lens, but you can get a pretty good decent zoom shot on here. So yeah, I just absolutely love the cameras on here. Video is really solid. Just really like the cameras on this phone. I think they're really solid. Now the battery life will surprise you. So typically with smaller phones, the battery life is gonna suck. But on this phone, it has very good battery life. 4300 milliamp hour battery, 30-watt wire charging. The only thing this phone doesn't have is wireless charging. So if you can get over that, it's just a beast when it comes to battery life. Charges decently fast, and screen on time. This phone, I couldn't kill it in a day. It lasts for me as a light user, day and a half easy. Awesome phone, guys. Definitely check it out. All right, next is the Galaxy S23. So everyone always asks about the S23 Ultra, and I never really get to talk about this phone that much because a lot of people they don't ask about it. But guys, the battery issue is pretty much fixed with this phone. If you guys watch my battery drain test, that's why a lot of people shy away from the smaller ones. The battery life is excellent on this phone. We're gonna get to that a little bit later, but I do have a battery drain test if you guys want to check that out. That was the main issue with this phone. Now you can find this phone for around $700, $750 depending on where you shop. I have some links down below for you guys. But yes, I really liked using this phone, guys. Now that the battery was fixed, it's a really nice phone. So it's got the aluminum frame on here. I think the design still looks pretty sweet on here. It's IP68 dust and water resistant. Feels really good in the hand as well too. It's not as boxy as the S23 Ultra, and it's a smaller device at 6.1 inches, so it's a little bit easier to hold. Dynamic AMOLED, 120 Hz HDR10 plus. and then it actually gets up to 1750 nits peak brightness, so it's a very bright display outdoors. Just a beautiful panel, 1080p 425 for the PPI. Just a beautiful panel, very slim bezels on here. Absolutely love the design front to back on here. Of course, we got Android 13 on here with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 processor, and that is very fast on here. And what's also very cool about this phone is that just like the S23 Ultra, this phone does not get as hot as the S22 and the S21. So that's something that I really liked. Whether it's gaming or you're doing something a little bit more intensive, like filming 4K video or something like that, it's not gonna heat up as much, which is something that I really like. You also have 128 gigs of internal storage and 8 gigs of RAM on here. Stereo speakers sound great, they're very loud. So that's really awesome. And of course, you have your under the display fingerprint sensor, all the bells and whistles with Samsung desktop support. And the cameras on here are pretty much on par with the S23 Ultra. It's just missing that 100 times zoom and all that the fancy stuff. But still, great camera for anybody who just wants to do a point and click. It's got a 50 megapixel standard and a 10 megapixel telephoto, 3x optical zoom, a 12 megapixel ultra wide. It shoots in 8K 30 as well too, and then a 12 megapixel selfie cam that shoots in 4K 60. Excellent cameras. Like I said, it's a flagship phone, so you're going to get flagship quality photos. And like I said, it's pretty much on par with the S23 Ultra minus the 100 times zoom and all that good stuff. So just an awesome phone for taking photos and video as well too. Like I said, the highlight with this phone is the battery life. 3900 milliamp hour battery, 25 watt wired charging, which again is not that fast. It's got the wireless and reverse wireless charging. Battery life is excellent on this device. I can't stress that enough. I think it beat the S23 Ultra in the PUBG drain test, so check that out. And it didn't get really hot and stuff like that. Of course, it got warm, but it didn't get super hot like I was thinking it was gonna do. Yeah, so absolutely great battery life. Easy day and a half for this phone. Definitely worth checking out. All right, guys, next is the iPhone 12. If you have an iPhone 7, 8, iPhone 6, iPhone 10, this is the phone that I would upgrade to, because you're not really breaking the bank when you buy this phone, because it's like around not $1,200, $400. And yeah, that's a really good deal for this phone, because let's be real, the iPhone 12, there's almost pretty much no difference between this one and the iPhone 14. That's why I said this is an excellent buy. So it's got the aluminum frame. It's IP68 dust and water resistant. Basically looks like an iPhone 14 with, the cameras are just switched around on the newer ones. It's got the 6.1 inch Super Retina XDR OLED display, 1200 nits peak brightness. It's 1080p plus, 460 for the PPI. Basically the same screen as the iPhone 14. And it's a beautiful panel, color wise, and I think, no one will have an issue with the screen. Of course, you got the notch up top, but I think, yeah, the iPhone 14 still has the, it still has the notch, so you're not missing out on anything. You also have the Apple A14 chip on here as well too. This phone will get updates for a very long time. I believe Apple has about a 6 or 7 year software update pledge, I guess. That's basically what they seem to be following. You also have 64 gigs of internal storage and 4 gigs of RAM on here. This phone is still blazing fast. There's almost nothing that this phone can't really do. It's a very fast phone. Multitasking, playing the latest games, there's almost no issue with this phone at all that I could see. And then you also have great stereo speakers on here. Face ID works really well on here. Cameras are, again, basically on par with the newer phones. Of course, you could spot, minor differences with the newer iPhone 14, but honestly, the average person probably won't be able to tell the difference at all. You have a 12 megapixel standard and a 12 megapixel ultra wide. It shoots in 4K 60 on the front and back with a 12 megapixel selfie cam. Again, to me, basically the same cameras as the iPhone 14, not a major difference. So you're still getting flagship quality camera, and also excellent video on here as well too. So just an overall very good camera, as you guys know with iPhones, always pretty dependable cameras. This phone has pretty decent battery life. It has a 2815 milliamp hour battery. You also get the MagSafe charging on here as well too, with the wireless charging as well. Battery life is pretty decent on the iPhone 12. You can definitely get through a full day with this phone, no problem. And yeah, I just really like this phone because it feels basically like an iPhone 14. Again, there's almost no difference, so I would go for this one. The next phone, a lot of people forgot about because the Pixel 7 Pro was such a pretty good improvement, but the Pixel 6 Pro, once the software got pretty much ironed out, this phone is awesome experience, guys. It's like 330 on Amazon, and the standard Pixel 6, which is also very good, it's like 200 bucks. So a lot of people forgot about this device, and it's a really awesome deal for anybody who's looking for a flagship phone. I mean, this is just great. You have the a pretty good design on here. It's the design that Google looks like they're gonna stay with. It's a very unique design with the camera bar, and I really like it. It gives a very unique look. It's got the aluminum frame, and then you also got IP68 dust and water resistant on here as well, and it feels pretty solid in the hand. I really like the way it feels. This phone has the LTPO AMOLED display. It's 120 Hz HDR10 plus, 6.7 inches, and then it's 1440p 512 for the PPI. Beautiful display on here, very sharp, very smooth panel with Android 13 on here. Everything is just very fluid. And again, this phone had a rough release with the software, but it's got ironed out, so everything is just really buttery smooth on this device now. 128 gigs of internal storage and 12 gigs of RAM on board with this guy. It's still a very fast phone. The Google Tensor chip, the original one, it works fine. You can play PUBG on it. You can play the latest games, no issue on this phone. I didn't really have an issue with performance at all. Everything's, like I said, very silky smooth with the stock Android. And again, this phone gets updates very, very fast. So that's one thing about Pixel devices. You get the latest version of Android, so Android 14, you get the betas first and all that good stuff. So absolutely love stock Android. And you also get stereo speakers with this phone, very loud sounding stereo speakers, great bass on here. Under the display fingerprint sensor, it's not the fastest, but it does work, no problem. The only thing about this phone is that it doesn't have face unlock. The 7 Pro does, but this one does not. But again, the fingerprint sensor, it's decent. So you do have a 50 megapixel standard on here, a 48 megapixel telephoto. It does 4x optical zoom, and then a 12 megapixel ultra wide. It shoots in 4K 60 with a 11.1 ultra wide selfie cam on here as well too, and it shoots in 4K 30. The cameras on here are still very, very good. They basically comparable to the Pixel 7 Pro. I think Pixels take some of the best steals to me, in my opinion. This is my go-to camera when I want to film. Like all my YouTube shorts, I film with Pixel. And I really like taking pictures with the Pixel. I really like the image processing. So it's my personal go-to. And I just think the shots just come out really, really good. I really like Google's image processing. This phone has pretty decent battery life. It's got a 5,000 milliamp battery, 23 watt wired charging with 23 watt wireless and reverse wireless charging is on here as well too. Overall battery life is pretty decent. You can easily get around 6 hours of screen on time, and absolutely love the Pixel 6 Pro. I mean, it's 330 335 right now. It's a very good deal. All right, last is the Xiaomi 12T. This is a really great device. It's a $500 phone, and I really like it because Xiaomi puts IR blasters on their phones, so you can control like all the TVs in the house and appliances and stuff like that. So I absolutely love that. Also, I've been a big fan of their design language, especially with the camera module. I really like that as well. So I'm a big fan of that. And the hardware is pretty solid on this phone. It's got a 6.67-inch display. It's 120 Hz AMOLED HDR10 plus, 900 nits peak brightness. It's a 2K display in 446 for the PPI. Really nice, colorful, beautiful panel on here. Now, this phone does have the Android 13, MIUI 14, I believe. And MIUI has a ton of features and stuff like that. I know a lot of people, you either love or hate MIUI. For me, I think they're definitely improving on it, and I didn't have any issues with this phone. Everything was pretty smooth. Yeah, there can be a little bit bloatware on this phone, but this is nothing that you can't uninstall. As far as the specs, it's a MediaTek Dimensity 8100 Ultra chip. This chip is very fast, guys. Playing games on here was a breeze. Just bouncing in and out of applications, watching the animations and stuff. It's a very smooth chip. I was really surprised by that. So everything is just really fast on this phone. 128 gigs of internal storage and 8 gigs of RAM on here as well too. Stereo speakers sound pretty good on here, pretty loud. Like I said, it has the infrared port on here. So that's something that I really enjoy. Under the display fingerprint sensor, pretty fast, no issues with that. And the cameras on here are pretty decent. I think that's where you sort of see like you know, the price cut compared to flagship phones like an actual S23 Ultra, like the 12 Pro. 108 megapixel standard, so it can take some very highly detailed shots for cropping. 8 megapixel ultra wide, 2 megapixel macro, which is and then it shoots in 4K 30, 20 megapixel selfie cam. It only shoots in 1080p 60. So you can see they sort of cut where some phones can shoot in 4K 60 and shoot in 4K 60 on the front. You can see they kind of cut it a little bit with the cameras, but overall for a point and click, I think this phone takes pretty good photos. So you know, if you just out, you need a quick photo, I don't think anybody would be upset with the image quality of this phone. You have a 5,000 milliamp battery, and what is super cool about this phone, you get a 120-watt charger in the box, guys. That is absolutely, you don't get that with the S23, you don't get that with the iPhone Pixel. That is awesome, and this phone charges crazy fast, like 20 minutes from like 0 to 100, and it's just charged, absolutely nuts. So good battery life on here, and it just charges. So you got to give it points for that. Like that's just nuts. But let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.